tomorrow at Conrad's.
So,
It's kind of a fundraiser for
what is this?
That's right. It's going to be a $10
This strange,
charge at the door. It's going to be a
this
big
strange,
And because it's at Conrad's,
I admit, even though it's my video, I admit how strange it is. What's the strange topic of today? That a drunkard whack offer is a proponent of asceticism, but not for asceticism's sake. Asceticism is a temporal. Asceticism is a temporal. Asceticism is a temporal necessity. And we always oppose, Apollo versus Dionysus. But asceticism is beyond Apollo. So when we talk about beyond good and evil, asceticism is beyond Apollo. So what's beyond Dionysianism or Buddhism? What's beyond Dionysianism or Buddhism? What many people might call black magic. But it's not even. Negatives and positives, it's not an even split. It's not an even split. 1 times 1 goes all the way around the circle. -1 times -1 goes halfway around the circle. Negatives and positives don't equate. Alright. Asceticism. I am essentially a drunkard. And a former luster was only become less or not a luster by default, though that lusters within me. Yet I still drink a lot. A lot being too much. Yet, I'm a proponent of asceticism. What does that mean? It means I propone that in myself. But I don't believe that asceticism corresponds to eternal truth, but temporal truth. There's more than one temporal truth. The asceticists are a temporal necessity. I am glad this is earlier than normally when I make a lot of my videos. Jägermeister, vodka, ice, tonic water. That's where I'm at. There's that old Roman saying, in vinum veritas, in wine there is truth, in alcohol there is truth. Which is why I'm making this video, because if I waited till I was sober, I might be dead. I might never become a temporal asceticist, but I will fight for their cause.
Good work, my friend.
You guys got the permit applications? Got the money?
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
That's for you.
Why is asceticism a temporal truth? Obviously, in the world we live, it requires sexual reproduction. Asceticists were typically the priests or nuns,
Position 1, position 2. Do you copy?
the female priests, so to speak.
4 copies. Okay, just 1 over. What I know later. A couple of days. If you need anything.
And just like sometimes I work in Enfield, New Hampshire, which is where the Shakers hail the Shakers, related to the Quakers. And the Shakers lived in essentially groups of men, groups of women, though they would congregate. They were celibate, and they didn't persist because they didn't propagate, because they were celibate. So the story goes. They would gather to sing songs and dance in this progression toward men and women, and at the end of it, they'd writhe on the floor after having progressed certain memorized songs, and they'd sing them faster and 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 faster until it collapsed, and they were all just ooh on the floor, which is why they were called the Shakers, which is very Dionysian. But the way they lived their lives was clean lines. Everything tucked away, and a place for everything tucked away and known. It's kind of like, recently, once again, I've begun trying to construct the objects in my life. Can you hear the train in the background? Is that above ground, underground? Recently in my life, I've tried to readopt something I had before a big change happened, which was everything I own and everything I know within 7 seconds of my life. I'm not doing great, but I'm doing. But maybe 6-7 years ago, I had pretty successfully, not perfectly, but pretty successfully. My apartment looked much different. It was much more feng shui, aesthetically, as we commonly refer to aesthetics. And one of my goals then, that I came to some achievement to, was make everything in my apartment, and this is half of my apartment essentially, the other half is downstairs, make everything in my apartment within 7 seconds of reach. Make everything I own, everything I know that is mine, so to speak, within 7 seconds of touching, of grabbing, of having, of holding. Then I passed a threshold, or I was pushed beyond a threshold, or pulled, or facilitated. Whatever the case may be, I breached a threshold. The truth I found beyond that threshold was devastating. It was more true, and it hurt like fuck, and it still hurts, and it has hurt for so many years. And I'm trying to reach back with what I've learned back toward that philosophy. And every day is I wouldn't say every day is a disaster. Less days are disastrous now. But the disasters are, I reach levels of disaster internally that I never expected could even be possible. And I wouldn't say the same thing about my successes yet. But my faith and my belief keep me focused enough. I wouldn't say I'm focused, but I'm saying focused enough that I can conceive of a way that I could get there. And that's what keeps me going. My prayer for you is that if you struggle in a similar way, reach toward that. I wouldn't say it's the only thing that has saved me, but it has saved me. One of the strings in the nexus that has kept me afloat. I had to restructure some of my quote-unquote perpetual motion machine. I know it probably won't work, but I have an idea, and I want to see what it looks like. Before I build it proper, I gotta visualize it three-dimensional, so that's what I'm working on. I realized I showed yesterday that picture up there, behind the camera. And it showed one design. Then I thought I reformed it and made it better by making another design. As it turned out, my initial design was a little bit better because it accounted for something I didn't account for in my building of the quote-unquote simpler design that, as it turns out, is wrong. So now I'm restructuring my design B to design C, which is more complicit with design A, which was logically better. Though I know it's not perfect. But the only reason I want to build this model, not as a functional model, but as a three-dimensional object to contemplate, that I may make a model, whether it's correct or not. And I always have to remind myself of this. I've went up and down this roller coaster already today several times. That, and I have to remind myself, and it's so hard, like, it's good to learn. It's good to learn when we're wrong. And we're so wrong. Despite all the rightness. We're so wrong. And it's good to learn them. I prefer to learn little wrongnesses which feel big in shapes. And I can understand Newton had some quote to this
Do you have any Megadeth?
about why he delved into the subjects he did to keep himself from the wicked women. But the women aren't wicked. It's the lustfulness. It's the lustfulness for women that is wicked. Not women. The lustfulness for women. And we attribute that lustfulness for women. We attribute that lustfulness to the women. As far as, see, there's two types of black magic, so it's tough to talk about this type of thing. Because one black magic, well, okay, there's 3 or 4 types, but one type of black magic is the magic of the black folk. Black folk encompassed a large continent and now wrap the world. There's a lot of black folk magics. It ain't all right, but at least one is.
Okay, can I still be guard?
Shut up and kiss me.
And then as far as the conceptual, aesthetic idea of black magic, there's the black magic of the acuity of the eternal. And there's the black magic of the opacity. Never mind the black magic of truth. Black.
Good morning.
The magic, the good spell.
You slept well. I hope I wasn't too much of an animal. Hold it. You know I will.
Anyway, got work to do on this. I set it all up, but let's see.
Are you alright?
What? I feel like I'm replacing the delete bit of life next to Mahogany Rush.
I'm sorry. Well, relationships aren't for the timid. I should know. For I'm no longer a stranger in the ways of the woman.
Alright. Good work, my friend. On that note, game on!
Game on!
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it takes 2 people to run a concert. 1 backstage and 1 out front. 2. 1 man alone cannot do this. Why? You belong to the backstage team. Milton,
You're over my eyes.
between Wayne's backstage team and God's front stage team, which includes myself in the booth. To the left and the right of the stage of machine gun nests.
The asceticists. What do they combat? Is sex bad? It's simple as, okay, let's boil it down. Is sex bad? No. Is sex bad now? Kind of.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. When did you turn into a nut bar?
So much sex is built upon building the family. They say in evolution it's about spreading your genes and all this kind of thing. That's not the impetus of evolution as we know it. That's not the impetus of people creating these familial and familial bonds. Think about it. You know, we're not really speaking about prime principles. What we're speaking about, the prime principle is, the prime principle is the truth, 51%.
40 inches in the winter to about 200 inches in the
It's 50-50, but we're going to say it. The prime principle is the truth, 51%.
With your quest for knowledge, educated men are rare.
49% is the selfishness as a part of the truth. 51% is the faith. 49% is the fear. Which, 51-49, maybe we can discern that. 501, 499, harder to discern. 5,001, 4,999, harder to discern. So, how far is that split? If you add enough decimals, it's indistinguishable. We can only distinguish so many decimals. Never mind the fact that decimals are base 10. Never mind the fact that, decimals that we use are base 10. In computers we use ones and zeros, which are base 2, but we encode in base 16. But in an infinite base system, what's really happening? And those who can think in an infinite base system, the Hindu, as far as I've seen so far, the Hindu, the Ethiopian, and the Australian, Aborigines. I don't know the right words, I don't know what they call themselves, I'm just saying. Hindu, Hindi, Hindu, I don't know the right word, and I'm sorry for being offensive. But I only know what I know. But I know Hamachandra had a piece of it. I know the Ethiopians had a piece of it. And I know the Australian Aborigines had a piece of it. You know what else I know? I got a piece of it. You know what else I know? You got a piece of it.
You wouldn't hear it, because you're a freak with a microphone.
Let's see how I'm doing.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Isn't that true?
Not bad, not bad. 22 minutes. I can take a breath. Asceticism. Why is asceticism necessary now? Or why has it been necessary? And when I say now, in this sense, I'm talking for thousands of years. And perhaps for the next 1,000 years. I'm so optimistic about what's coming, but maybe I don't realize that as far as the Platonic great year is concerned, which is debated somewhere between 24 and 26,000 years, like when I say, when I have this feeling like soon something comes, I might be off by 1,000 years, which is pretty small. Well, I wouldn't even say cosmologically, because cosmologically, universally is different. So universally, 1,000 years is very small. Cosmologically, well, that 1,000 years is split up different. So I'm a drunkard, aspiring toward asceticism as a temporal necessity, as an act of war.
What you're saying is that Peter Malone warned Kennedy not to mess with military industrial complex.
Asceticism has been, for thousands of years, a necessary act of war. We have Apollo versus Dionysus. Asceticism is outside of Apollo. What's outside of Dionysus or Buddha?
It's good, man. You know, wait, what can I do you for?
Not even chaos, not even anarchy. Organized domination, which we associate with the West because the West has been successful in its dominance. And that's not wrong. And we criticize the idea, which leads back to Rome, of might makes right. Right. Whoever wins writes history. Right. What I'm saying is that what has happened now, the right, okay, might has made right. And what I'm saying is the actual true right, because when we say might makes right, we say the true might of true domination of those who have actually done the most brutal shit makes right. And when we say might makes right, what we're saying is the right that might makes isn't necessarily right, but it's the right that's promoted or propagated. What I'm saying is that we have come to a point where the true right has infiltrated the true might. The true right has infiltrated the true might, such that the right that might had made in the past for the last 2,000, 4,000 years, however long, is no longer the same right that might makes now, because now the right has infiltrated the might. And we can't assume that the things we see on TV, in the news, in the media, is actually what's happening and actually what the might is. People are concerned about this. People are concerned about that. Yet, what really happens is, because I mean, Black lives do matter. They matter deeply. It will be resolved. It will be resolved in the right way. It will be. So on beyond that. 2, women. Women are more abused and subjugated. I mean, domestic violence is a bigger problem than racism. Yet they're completely connected, they're completely entwined, and to call one a bigger problem than the other is actually a misnomer. It's a misdiagnosis, it's a misspeak, because they're part of the same problem. One of the problems that they're related to most deeply is the fact that we slaughter animals. Things with spines. I mean, there are mammals with more chromosomes than we have. What happens when they breach that threshold? There are little gerbil motherfuckers with more chromosomes than we have. And we associate intelligence with the size of the brain, but true intelligence, we associate intelligence with the intellectual quotient and disregard the emotional quotient. But and the emotional quotient is designated to the complete neurometric that stretches through the whole body. We know the gut is a second brain, or at least that's what we say. So the awakened neural network, right? Like you could have a huge ball, but if it's deflated and twisted, right? Like say you had a big ball, a medium ball, and a little ball, and they were all slightly deflated and twisted, then the biggest ball would be the best, right? But if you had one little ball that was perfectly inflated, you bounce that motherfucker Super Ball, bang, to the sky, right? That's where we're at.
I'm still thinking about it. Give me a week.
Asceticism has been necessary as an act of will. Nietzsche was getting there, but he didn't get there. The will to power,
It's my husband.
beyond good and evil, right? Quote unquote, beyond Dionysus
And he came over here yesterday. He was crazy, like an animal.
and Apollo. And we think of that as
You killed your husband?
Malthusian,
You mustn't even think it. I know you love me.
Malthusian reason, as we interpret Malthus.
I know you want to.
Darwinian evolutionary reason, as we have interpreted Darwin.
Just got cigarettes. Would you rather? Here, my first. I'm just so.
Whoa. It's a pretty big gun.
Darling. All this talk about destroying him. All these apparatus.
There's so many interpretations of good, and there's so many interpretations of evil.
He is a dead man.
You're a vertebrate. I'm a vertebrate. Meat, barbecue. And we talk about family. Family's important. Family, barbecue.
I got myself get myself out of here. Taking on a chance for a kid, man. Keep me fit.
You think someday you won't be that barbecue? You believe in God, you believe in evolution.
Stop doing that, all right?
Hello, is anybody here? Hello?
Oh my God, it's Rick Taylor! Oh my God!
You must be Fred Campbell.
Yes, I am.
This must be Wayne stock.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
A
is.
little rustic, little bucolic, but oh well, I like it. It's cute.
Thanks.
Oh, how much is that? Better get ready for the show. Get dressed.
You can see it?
Well, of course I can see him. I even missed a half-naked Indian, for God's sake.
Rick Taylor, Garth Elgar.
Rick, you showed up. Cool.
Yes, I think you got it all from you know, thank you. Well, I can say no. This guy came to me in a dream. I said, who are you? He said, Richard Morris. I said, get lost. I said, I'm familiar with your work.
Shit!
More like a crooner.
Alright, well, that's that.
Where's our motor take?
We're gonna let it go.
No, well, you know, you gotta do Wayne stuff. So I figured what the heck.
Chris, what's going on? Oh, you know? No. We're here for Wayne stuff. Same here, dude. Really looking forward to the tale. Later. Wait, where'd all these people come from? Gardens. Nick, you gotta get back to the playing fields.
If I waited till it was perfect, I wouldn't do it. If I waited until it was even good, I wouldn't do it. If I waited to spare myself the embarrassment of being the fool that I am, I wouldn't do it. And I admit, it's part of my agenda.
Right, thanks a lot.
If I don't, quote unquote, make it, then all of this doesn't matter.
So far, a lot of people started to show up. There's the bands are here.
If I don't, quote unquote, make it, all of this doesn't matter.
Going to Earl.
Okay, Clark. Next day on the Earl there. I need your help. Think.
If I do make it, it does matter. And that speaks to all of us making these videos. Like, you know, I do think, we think that we see these things and they'll last. I do think that as time goes on, there will be a quote-unquote battles over memory. But what is saved will matter. Whether it is saved by technology, by choice, by divine providence, by chance. There's a million billion different ways where digital information might be saved.
It's okay. She's marrying Bob.
And it's presumptuous to think that what I make or what you make will be saved. Do I hope what I make is saved long enough so that those in the future who have figured out what I have figured out to a higher degree see that me in the past has figured this out also and says, hey, he was on it, even though he's a stupid fuck? Do I want that? I do. Is that selfish? Maybe. Will it make any difference? I don't know. Do I hope so? Yes. Selfishly? Absolutely. But also, because there is a truth. It's not just a will to power. If we all don't get to that power falls.
That's the index book.
Yeah.
People talk about necessary evil. And they talk about, like, for instance, like when IBM, people don't talk about this a lot, but like when IBM, mechanical computers before there were electronic computers, calculated for the Germans statistics about the Jews of who to kill. If you believe history, that's up to you. But that's a historical fact. So these mechanical computers compiled data and basically decided this is who we're going to kill. We think it was a blind butchery, but it wasn't. It was a selective butchery, if we believe history. If we're willing to look deep enough into history and beyond the high story to the high story. I'm not advocating that. I'm not being a denier. What I'm saying is, look into the shit, man. I remember when I was at State College, I saw this Princeton professor. There's barely but anybody in the room. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I'm at Keene State. There's a Princeton professor doing a lecture. I'm there. And there was barely any there. He was the driest motherfucker ever. But basically, after 2 hours, him going on blah, 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 and he really was. I mean, it was worse than a cartoon or a parody. It was like, but the gist of the story was FDR knew all about the fucking Holocaust, and he let the shit happen. I mean, that was there were nuances, but that was the gist of the speech. Swear on the Bible. And there were political reasons, and it's because he wanted to win the war, and it's because he wanted to fight it. Yeah. So that's the whole deal, man. We know this shit's going on, and then we get wicked pissed because shit's going on. So what do we do to fight the shit that we're pissed about that's going on? It's the same thing with ascetics. Ascetics aren't against sex, but ascetics cultivate their will to a fucking fine point to push that 49-51, to push that 50-50, because the 50% of God is doing what the 50% of the eternal God can do, and that 50% of free will that we, as the Omega, are doing wrong. Asceticists, pull that shit together, man. So, I'm not an asceticist. I'm a drunkard fuck. A man, and that's why I'm not just pounded down by the alcohol. I'm pounded down by this idea, knowing that I could cultivate my will to a finer point, but not for the power of me, but for the power of you, to have the power to stop eating animals. Let's start with eyes, vertebrates. They're our brothers and sisters, man. We know we have common ancestors. Never mind the fact that even some plants have more chromosomes. What do we got for chromosomes? 42, 44, whatever? When we talk about 45, this, that, whatever. And we like to think that more chromosomes, more intelligence. What about those, silated protozoans that have 1,260 chromosomes? I mean, they dwarf us, which actually relates to the idea, if you take the Planck scale up to the scale of the universe, exponentially, a one-celled organism is approximately exponentially in the center of the universe, which is to say that a one-celled organism is the most complex because it's where the extremities meet. So we could think of ourselves, however we are far away from the exponent of a cell. We could think that within a cell, within a certain one-celled organism, there is an organelle that is correspondent to the human body. And that is what we are synonymous with. That's another discussion for another time. Oh, I gotta see how I'm doing on time. 40 minutes, not bad. So one of the things I'm trying to get to is, well, let's see. Can I get there? Right? I keep talking about the yin yang, but it keeps pissing me off, so I gotta get there. Plus or minus the square root of -1. What got me going on that was the black pen, red pen video of that awesome mathematician dude who makes black pen, red pen videos. Plus or minus the square root of -I, I'm sorry, the complex number. So happens he's Asian, as if that weren't a synchronicity, you know. And I know I'm only beginning to learn the difference between Asian cultures, so please forgive me. But ultimately, we're all the fucking same, man. We got the same number of chromosomes. What the fuck?
Because you had to try and do something with your life. But it was a failure. Whether you won or lost, it's important to say.
You know, like I watched a video yesterday about how Koreans hate Japan because of World War II, and like the starburst sun flag is an offense to Korea. I never knew that. You know, it's like essentially like the Nazi swastika to Korea. I didn't know that. Now I do, because of you two. The rebirth of the oral tradition. And even though I'm triggered by symbols, I hate that about myself. And I understand that about myself, and it still happens. We need to get beyond all that shit. Same with the swastika. Anybody who's studied anything about symbolism knows the swastika goes back to fucking way the fuck back. I wouldn't say all over the world, but around the world. We need to get over all that shit. And there's so much more I need to do. Because in the truth of truths, it all means something.
Hey, we don't want to end the movie like this. Yeah. Let's do the ending.
One of the things I've been interested in lately Yeah, I don't know the math right now, but I'm too drunk. But
Jim, what was I supposed to do on this concert? Because you need to learn that it doesn't matter what you do, son, don't you find who you are. That being an adult means facing
right, like the Hangul, the 6 vowels I have been learning recently. I think there's some quote like a wise man can familiarize himself with Hangul in a day, and a total buffoon can learn it completely in a week. I'm the dumbest motherfucker on the planet, so I'm giving myself a year. But these symbols to me line up so well with a unit circle. It's unbelievable. So, okay, Goss, right? Goss said that imaginary numbers should be Goss said imaginary numbers should be called lateral numbers. Gaussian numbers are associated with a square. Eisenstein numbers are associated with a triangle. Both have to do with the, Gaussian numbers in some sense have to do with like square root or the cubic root, which in a sense is a misnomer. Or not cubic, quatric root of a unit circle. And Eisenstein numbers have to do with the icosahedral plane, which has to do with this shape. Yeah, me singing I love rock and roll. Put another dime in the jukebox, baby. I ain't beating a dead horse, I'm beating a live horse. And I ain't beating him, I'm petting him. One of the simplest objects in existence. But nobody knows it. Just like knows the truth. So why do the asceticists cultivate their will to combat that which is below Dionysianism? Truly below. All things are not equal. Not only below, but below in hemorrhage. Outside the pole. There's more than one type of panpsychism.
Yeah, we're gonna clean it up. Okay?
If we separated panpsychism into three, one is really, 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 really wrong. One is better and still wrong. One is... Okay, we'll separate into four. One is more true, and one is true. I'm sorry that I'm this way, and I'm sorry to my betters. I have no lessers. I'm sorry to my betters and my peers that I am this way. If we don't get there, man, if we don't get there, it's going to be so bad. If we don't get there, it will be so bad. But if we get there, if the collective free will gets there, the asteroids that came down and destroyed the dinosaurs, that's what's coming if we don't get it right. It is. It is. And it's not it's not the way you think about it. It's because of the way everything is connected. The math can never account for all those fine points of light that intersect each other, which has everything to do with free will. Anytime you make a decision, you're creating a laser. I mean, there's no number that we know of that could express the number of essential, not even lasers, man, just fucking white light. There's no number to express the lines. Z doesn't even touch it. If we don't get it right, we're toast. The truth will prevail. But wouldn't it be nice if we could come along with it? Wouldn't that be nice? Okay, that's it for now. But I will mention one point I haven't touched upon, but if this is worth contemplating, very worth contemplating, especially if you're into any type of meditation and where meditation came from. I'll leave all the other shit aside for now, but if you're into any type of meditation and where meditation came from, I'm not going to talk about the Bible for now. I've talked about that before and why you shouldn't eat meat and why. If you're into any type of meditation, where did that come from? Okay, go back to reincarnationalism. Never mind resurrection. We're just going to talk about reincarnationalism, and not much. If reincarnationalism exists and the world as we know it exists and persists, if you reincarnate, right? The only people we ever hear about reincarnation are always people who are like, they were Cleopatra, or they were Caesar, or they were Hitler, or they were Jesus, or they were Judas, whatever.
Since their last one, what's it called? Wayne's World 2? Yes!
Now that you can make a movie,
Of the year.
I'm honey.
now that YouTube exists and you make movies, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but anybody can now. Anybody can make a record that lasts beyond their death in conversation. If reincarnation exists, a huge question considering the number of people who believe in it or purport to believe in it or think they believe in it. Provided that reincarnation happens what we consider forward through time. I'm not so sure about that, but if reincarnation exists, if I die tomorrow and I'm born again the next day, I don't think that's the way it happens, but let's say that's the way it happens. If I die tomorrow and I'm born the next day, 7 years from now, I could come upon this video. What would happen to the other me then when I saw myself speaking to me?
Nice to meet you, Miss Horny. Take me, guard.
It's the fight of our decade.
We're serious about putting on a rock concert.